What's up, y'all? This is the Roommate Investor. Today we're going to talk about the proper way to file a complaint against your landlord when you all have an issue or a disagreement. I've been to court many times. I've seen many cases, and sometimes the tenants do have a strong, solid case in what they're saying. The problem is they're not following the correct process with the paperwork and documenting the things properly, but really they're not going through the court system the right way, and because of that they're not winning these cases. So a lot of landlords may hate me for this video, but we need to help everyone, not just the landlord side. So first off and foremost, before we even get to court and filing paperwork, let's go over some steps that we can do to maybe try to mitigate these options. First, you want to just try to talk to your landlord, see what kind of rapport y'all can build, and just try to talk it out. I mean, at the end of the day, you're living in their property and they need you and you need them. We don't want to create any animosity. If you can, you want to try to stay out the court as much as possible. Nobody wants to be in and out of court, take off work, document things, print things out. Now, no matter what happens in the court case, now there's a bad stain, with your landlord. Maybe they're not going to renew your lease because of this, or, because you actually did the process the right way and you won. It's just a lot of different, nuances with this. And if you can, you want to just stay out to begin with. So, try to have a conversation, call, get on the phone, try to have a meeting at the house and, just try to be nice and, see if y'all can handle it that way. If this does not work, make sure you start keeping your communication through text as much as possible so you have record and you can document everything. As a landlord, this is what I tell my landlords as well. Just because by having everything through text, there's no more he say, she say. Everything is in text and we can all refer back to the text, print out the text at any given moment. And you can, you have something to go back and refer to and say, look, you remember here, Monday, September 30th, and then October 12th, and so on and so forth. As you're documenting things, you also want to review the lease. Review the lease, see what's covered, what's not covered, see what your obligation is as a tenant, see what their obligation is as a landlord, and just be familiar with the lease. Because you don't want to get in a situation where you're in court and they're saying, this is in the lease and you didn't know, and now you just, you don't have anything to say. Make sure you review the lease and you know what your rights are. Also review the tenant's rights and responsibility rules as well. You can also view your local neighborhood quality code control and the city ordinance and just things like that with your local city. You can just type in city ordinance or quality control and insert your city. And by doing that, you could just get more familiar with, what's allowed and what's not allowed. Now, let's talk about the court process. What you need to do is you need to go to court and file what's called a tenant's assertion. What this is a form that's basically outlining what the problem is in your property, what your issue is, and basically why you feel like you should or should not pay rent. What you don't want to do is just hold your rent, because when you do this, the landlord is just going to take you to court, and because you didn't file this form, you're automatically lost. Just like the landlord has a process if they want to evict you or take you to court and they just can't kick you out, you also have a process when it's time for you on your side to withhold rent. They can't just kick you out and you just can't withhold rent. What you want to do is file what's called a tenant assertion at the courthouse. You're going to complete the form and detail what your issue is. Then you're going to pay your rent to the court. So now the landlord can't say, oh, they're just lying, they're making this up because they don't want to pay rent or because they don't have the money. By paying your rent to the court, it ensures that you do have the money, you're not making this up, and you truly just want the issue dealt with. Now the court is holding your rent payment. So now what's going to happen is you're going to have a court date set up with the landlord. And basically what you have to do is you have to continue paying rent to the court until your court date. So what you really want to do is probably just have a court date as soon as possible, which is usually around 3 weeks out in my city, but it could be, 1 or 2 months out. But what you want to do is you want to continue paying that rent to the court. You don't want to hold the rent because that's going to look bad. So until the court date, if a new month comes on the 1st, just pay your rent to the court. This is the proper way and the proper process in order for you to actually file a complaint against your landlord. Once the date comes, you want to make sure that you have all of your evidence. So you want to be tracking things before, during, and after the court date, really. So you want to take pictures. You want to have your text messages ready. You want to make sure you have everything printed out. We want to stay away from he say, she say, and we want to just make sure we have our documented proof. When the court date comes, we're going to present the proof, and the landlord is going to present their side as well. At that point, the judge gets to make a decision. If the judge rules in your favor, he may actually return part of the money back to you due to the negligence of the landlord. So if your rent is $1,000 and the landlord was negligent, maybe the judge will just give the landlord $500 and give you $500 back. Especially if you had your own expenses that you had to carry, the judge is going to factor all of that in. So if you paid $3,000 to the court over 3 months, but you also had these extra expenses, the judge may reward you $1,500 and the landlord $1,500, and then y'all can proceed with the future months. You want to make sure that you do this anytime that you have a dispute with the landlord, and you just feel like y'all cannot come to an agreement and you're just not happy with your living situation and the outcome. If you like what you hear, just make sure you subscribe and put your post notifications on for the next video.